Welcome to the Plotpoint podcast with Leslie Z.
And I'm Sarah D.
We serve distilled interviews with some of the world's leading authors in just 20 minutes because we know you are busy and we are too. After all, we have books to write, cocktails to shake, and fabulous places to visit.
Right, what do you two want? And where's my 100,000?
Okay, we want to know everything so that we can write a thriller like you. What do we got to do?
Now, listen, young lady, I don't write thrillers, number one. Number two, I am not a ballet dancer. I am not an opera singer. I do not play the violin. I tell stories. It's a God-given gift. Otherwise, I'd be an opera singer.
Absolutely.
So how difficult was it for you to get that first publishing deal for Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less?
14 publishers turned it down. The 15th publisher gave me £3,000 and they published 3,000 copies and they just about sold them. They then went into paperback. It sold 25,000 in a month. I rang them up and said, I presume you'll be publishing another 25,000. They said, no, it doesn't work that way, Jeffrey. You have to write another book and we will keep it in print. But I said, no, you'll print another 25,000. No, they said. Yes, I said. No, they said. Yes, I said. Last month, I rang them and said, are you publishing any this month? And that's 27,775,000. And I still have to ring them every month.
That is crazy that you still have to ring them every month. They should be, and maybe they should increase the monthly allotment.
Well, I can't grumble. They're on the 142nd reprint of Cain and Abel. Last week was the 142nd reprint. So I'm not grumbling, Leslie. No, you're not Leslie. You're the other one. Who are you?
The other one's Sarah.
You're Sarah. No, you're Leslie.
Cain and Abel is among the 100 best-selling books in the world.
It's number 14.
With a similar number of copies sold as To Kill a Mockingbird and Gone with the Wind. What do you think it is that resonates with people so deeply and makes Cain and Abel a classic?
We live in an age of aspiration. We live in an age of wanting to achieve. And it's the classic story of someone with nothing and someone with everything. One already having everything, one having nothing, and they meet only once, but it changes their whole life. Now, if you had said to me when I wrote it, this will go to number one in 57 countries within a month, I would have laughed. I would have thought that impossible. So it was done. I don't want you to think I sat down and thought, this is the formula, this is the way. I just wrote what I loved the idea of this person born in a Polish forest, his mother dying when he's born, and the other boy born in a Boston hospital that his father had built. I loved the idea of on different sides of the Atlantic, and they meet only once. It struck me as a very simple idea, but I always say in the end, you've still got to write the 500 pages. You can get the idea, but 500 pages have to be written.
So what is your sort of method? Is it you get an idea and then, you're in your 2-hour chunks? What is it?
Well, sometimes I don't know beyond the next page. And I very rarely know beyond the next chapter. And my theory on that is quite simple, Leslie. If I don't know, you don't know. So I get up in the morning at 5:30. I start work at 6, first 2 hours of the day, 6 to 8. I pretty well know 3 pages, if I'm lucky 4, and then I start praying. And it'll take me in a direction and I follow it. Sometimes, having never thought of going in that direction, but sometimes the sentence sends you in a totally different direction. And you must follow it. Because if you follow it, the reader will follow it. So in a way, I'm very lucky because that is just a gift. That is lucky. Some people, I'm told, put little slippers on the the wall and they follow each little slipper carefully. I know, once upon a time, and then I start praying.
When do you know you're done?
I think each book, you can never be sure what length it will be, but I think each book takes a natural course. And then you see where you're going. When asked that question, I always say, I wrote a book called First Among Equals, which is the story of 4 young men who want to be Prime Minister of Great Britain. And by the way, they're now remaking it with 2 young men, 1 woman and a gay. So the world has moved on since I wrote it. But nevertheless, I hadn't decided until the last chapter which one of them would become Prime Minister. And my reasoning was simple. If you know from the beginning which one will become Prime Minister, the clever reader will spot maybe just a sentence, maybe it's a couple of, got it, Jeffrey, you've given it away. But if I don't know, you can't know.
How messy is that first draft?
Pretty awful. The average book, I handwrite every word. The average book is 17 drafts. The one I've just finished, Endgame, about the London Olympics, was the 17th draft I handed in. And even then the editor came back saying 1 or 2 things. Yeah.
So when you are pantsing, as they say, not a plotter, do you ever find your organic path leads you down a road that ends up being a dead end and then you have to delete 10,000 words and find a new way, or it just never leads you wrong?
That hasn't happened. What did happen once, was I got a position where in one of the books, a man needed to travel to Australia to see a woman in a nursing home, and he needed to knock on the door and say, "Can I speak to Mrs. X?" because she had the answer. And once he'd got the answer, he was through. And one of you asked me earlier about what happens when you move on. The door opened. The matron was Scottish, and she said, "I'm very sorry to tell you, she died 3 days ago." Now, my great and legendary editor of Cain and Abel, Corley Smith, who edited J.D. Salinger, a truly great editor, said, "When that happens, Jeffrey, you don't make it easy. You solve the problem, because the reader will want to know how you've solved the problem." So I went for 3 days walking. It wasn't writer's block. It was I hadn't got a solution. And then suddenly it came up. You make the matron Scottish, which I'd done, she's now Scottish. And she says, "Are you returning to England?" And he says, "Yes, I am." "Oh, here's a letter she wanted to send. We'll save the postage." And he's got the letter. And in the letter is everything he needs. That took 3 days. But sticking to Corley Smith's theory, don't make it easy, Jeffrey. Don't look for the easy way out. "Can I see Mrs. X?" "Yes, she's waiting for you. Can't wait to see you." "Oh, you know why I've come to see you." "Yes, you want to know X, Y, and Z." Coward's way out. You must have the reader going, where are we going? What happened? Oh, how do we get out of this one? You must have that. Otherwise, people will put the book down.
So for 3 days, you were walking
That
and
is the only
thinking.
occasion round a golf course. And there is a funny story to it. It was in the Bahamas, and Sean Connery was in the center at 6 o'clock in the morning, playing long strokes of golf, hitting the ball about 300 yards. And I didn't want to talk to him, and he didn't want to talk to me. So I walked round and round the golf course, and he went on hitting these balls. And 3 or 4 years later, I saw him in Scott's restaurant, and he said, "I'd like to thank you, Jeffrey, for not coming over to talk." I said, "No, I'd like to thank you for not coming over to talk." He wanted to do his golf shots. I wanted to solve the problem of how I got my man back to England with the facts he needed to save his life.
That's the hard work, I think, sometimes when you just have to be with the thinking and not,
Yes,
there's nothing you can do.
absolutely right. 100% right. I say to young people, and you mentioned at the beginning how many young people now want to write novels. There is no substitute for hard work. There's a very distinguished journalist on the Times in London who came to see me and said, I can't understand why my book didn't get on the bestseller list. And I said, how many drafts did you do? And he said, one. I'm a journalist. I haven't time to do two. I think the editor wants 600 words by 6 o'clock. I've got to do it. I don't do it. I said, I do 17. If you can beat me with one draft, good luck.
And you write them out longhand. I can't even imagine. But
Well, I can't type and I can't use any machinery. I'm a bit pathetic. And yes, I do like to see the pen moving across the paper. I'll tell you another little secret too. I have watched people typing, like my wife, she's amazing. But the speed the words come up is much faster than when you're writing. And if you're writing and you're coming to the end of a sentence, you have longer to think about the next sentence.
You know what's interesting, Jeffrey? A few years ago, there was a New York Times article where they imaged people's brains while they were typing and while they were writing longhand, and it lit up two entirely different parts of the brain. And so I wonder if your writing longhand is somehow
That's an
helpful to
interesting
your
point.
creative
Maybe
process.
I've only, Sarah, maybe I've only got half a brain. I mean,
no, supposedly it does engage the creative sides. I think it's the
oh,
left brain. They say, and and people are losing their ability because, of course, kids don't write anything
any
or read.
longer. Isn't that sad?
It's very
It's a
sad.
strange age. I've always thought the arc. I've been very lucky with the arc
Mm.
because I was born in 1940. My first book was published in 1975, and I've had 50 years next year, 50 years of people still writing and still reading. And I wonder if my life started today and
Mm.
I wrote the sort of novels I write, novels of aspiration, novels of human novels of people, whether in the next 50 years, my book, nobody would read Cain and Abel. The other side of that coin is people say, if that is true, Jeffrey, you'd be writing a different type of novel. And I think that's possible as well. So I think I've been lucky. I think I remember when Cain and Abel was made into a mini series in Great Britain. I can't speak for the United States, but in Great Britain there were only 3 television programs: BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV. 17 million people watched Cain and Abel on television. You've now got 300 stations, and you don't know what to watch. And most of them, as both you know, are rubbish. I go through Netflix every night searching for something good, and I turn most of them off in 10 or 15 minutes. So the world has changed completely.
How have you seen publishing change?
There is absolutely no doubt, Leslie, that far more books are being presented to publishers, and it's very hard to get read. So even if you're good, it's difficult to get read. I say to any young person listening to this program, you need an agent who's respected, because they will
Mm.
bring a publisher who they know and say, I think you ought to read this one. That's what happened to me. I had an American agent called Deborah Owen, who was married to the British Foreign Secretary, David Owen, and I was a member of Parliament. So I went up to him and said, would your wife be kind enough to read this book? Debbie read it, loved it, and she was the one who went into battle. And 14 publishers turned her down. So we finally made it. So the point you're making, Leslie, and it's a fair point, it was a struggle in my day, but if you want an opinion, it's a blooming sight harder today.
Mm.
I find it, and I know me and Sarah have talked about this a lot. It's astounding the amount of books published in one day.
Yes.
And you almost ask why. I mean, God bless it. Everybody, so many people get published, but where does it go? How does it rise? You know, I read a ton. Sarah reads a ton. It's
Sometimes the public select an author and everyone is surprised.
yes.
Sometimes they say, we love this story, and it sells in millions, and everyone is surprised. And I suspect, Leslie, that there are many publishers praying they've got that book.
Mm.
Yes, I think so.
And I think to your earlier point about, you know, if you got published today, Jeffrey, I think stories of aspiration are timely and timeless. Has the culture changed? Are there more books? Are there more television channels? Are there just more of everything now? Yes. And yet innately, we're still all human. And that humanity of seeking and aspiring and desiring and struggling is timely and timeless. So I've been thinking about that since you
Well, I
raised
hope you're right. And I hope the proof of 142 reprints proves you're right. And I'm
Mm.
hoping my great grandchildren will say, well done, great granddad. We're still living off you. So, yes, I hope.
What are some of your biggest struggles? Maybe not now, maybe, or when you were beginning writing, like craft wise, was something difficult that it was always like, how do I get through this?
I don't, you know, I sat down and wrote Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less, which was almost autobiographical. And it flowed quite naturally. And I thought this is going to be one of the world's bestsellers, as every author does when they've written their first book. And as I say, it was turned down by everybody and it sold 3,000 copies. I don't remember sitting down and saying, there's a formula, there's a craft. There certainly is a craft. And I think after 50 years, I'm better at it, the
Mm.
craft. But it doesn't get easier. People often say, well, you've now done 50 books, Jeffrey. You've had 23 number ones in London and 7 number ones in America. Surely you can do it in 2 drafts or 3 drafts. Answer, no. It goes on. The latest book, Endgame, the story of the London Olympics and how my hero is in charge of security. William Warwickson, Chief Superintendent William Warwickson, in charge of security. I discovered by chance through the genuine head of security what went wrong with those Olympics and what the public never discovered. So I knew I had a story, and then you then, of course, got to write it. It goes back to this whole thing about everybody believes they've got a story in them. They haven't. They've got a short story often, and sometimes it's a piece of magic. And if I may give you an example without taking too much of your time, if you'll allow me to give you an example. I was in New Zealand many years ago, and a lot of people come up and say, well, if people wrote my life story, Jeffrey, it would be one of the world's bestsellers. And I think, oh, God. And I always say, have you killed your 3rd wife? No. Well, goodbye. This fellow said, I've got a story for you, Jeffrey. But he was over 100. So I thought I'd better listen. And he said, you know, when I became 100, this was in New Zealand, when I became 100, the Queen sent me a telegram congratulating me. And I was very pleased. I put it up on the wall in my office. And I wanted to live 4 years longer. And I said, why did you want to live 4 years longer? And he said, because then my wife would get a telegram saying she was 100. And I could put both on the wall. But when the 4 years went by, she didn't get a telegram. So I rang the palace and said, I'm not complaining. I just wondered. And they said, oh, we'll look you up. Yes, we sent you a telegram 4 years ago. Yes, we have your wife. Yes, we sent her a telegram 8 years ago. You can't buy a story like that. That's sheer magic, because what you get is the wickedness of women and their guile and their skill. That he didn't find out until he was 104, and then he didn't find out. No, so I believe there's a short story in every one of us, and sometimes a piece of magic, an incident, something that happened to you. But I do not believe there's a story in every one of us.